Today, a battle is brewing in the courts. A battle that could decide the future of access to life-changing medications for millions of Americans. At the center of the controversy, the FDA, a drug manufacturer and a powerful compound that has become a lifeline for those fighting obesity and diabetes. The drug is called Tirzepatide, marketed by Eli Lilly as Mounjaro for type 2 diabetes and Zepbound for weight loss. The question, did the FDA act recklessly when it declared the shortage of this critical drug to be resolved, forcing pharmacies to stop making cheaper compounded versions? And what does this mean for patients, for you and I, for the community who rely on compounded medications to maintain their health? I'm Christopher Durham. Late yesterday, we published a breaking news video, and today we take you deep into the heart of the unfolding legal battle between the Outsourcing Facilities Association and the FDA. The FDA's removal of Tirzepatide from the shortage list without the due process of proper federal notice at a time when they acknowledge that shortages still exist is the definition of arbitrary and capricious, said Lee H. Rosebush, chairman of the OFA. The agency's decision will have tremendous implications across the nation for patients and physicians, as well as the outsourcing facilities that made an enormous investment to meet patient demand in light of product shortages and delays. The Outsourcing Facilities Association, or the OFA, is the trade association representing FDA-registered 503B outsourcing facilities, or pharmacies. These facilities focus on providing hospitals, physicians, and patients with critically needed compounded medications. Before we dive in, I want to share a bit of my story to understand why this lawsuit matters. Since September 2023, I've been using Tirzepatide. Alongside my wife, Lorraine, we've lost a combined total of over 130 pounds. This drug has been transformative for us, and we know firsthand how vital it is for many people on a similar path. This has changed our lives and our health. But the reality is that getting our hands on the Eli Lilly branded versions of Tirzepatide, Mounjaro, or Zepbound has been difficult for much of this adventure. At times, they were unavailable and the cost out of reach for many. That's when compounded Tirzepatide became a critical option, especially for people like us who had to wait weeks, sometimes longer, to get the branded version, and for people like us who simply do not have access to the medications through our insurance. Our insurance does not cover this, so we're paying out of pocket. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you stay up to date on all our latest updates. This legal battle is more than just about regulations. It's about real people like you and me who are navigating this adventure together. With the FDA's recent decision, compounded Tirzepatide is dramatically limited and potentially unavailable, and for many, this creates a sudden and potentially dangerous gap in treating the disease of obesity. On October 2, 2024, with little warning, the FDA declared that the shortage of Tirzepatide had been resolved. Telehealth providers and compounding pharmacies were immediately thrown into turmoil, with many choosing to cease compounding Tirzepatide, and patients like Lorraine and I were honestly just scared for our health. The announcement caught many by surprise, especially those of us who knew that access to Zepbound and Mounjaro was still limited in many parts of the country. It's still very difficult to find. Under federal law, compounding pharmacies can create medications when the FDA-approved versions are in short supply. This process has been critical for meeting demand during the Tirzepatide shortage, which started in December of 2022. But with the FDA's sudden change, these pharmacies were effectively shut down overnight, leaving countless patients scrambling for alternatives. 5 days after the FDA's decision, a lawsuit was filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Texas. The plaintiffs, the Outsourcing Facilities Association, a group that represents pharmacies legally compounding medications, and a Texas-based compounding pharmacy, Pharmacia. Their claim that the FDA's actions were not just reckless, but illegal. They argue that the FDA ignored ongoing supply shortages, disregarded the needs of patients, and failed to follow the required legal process before making this decision. So there's three main allegations. The first, immediate cessation of compounding. The lawsuit asserts that pharmacies were forced to stop preparing compounded Tirzepatide without warning, despite ongoing shortages of Mounjaro and Zepbound in many areas. The plaintiffs claim that the FDA did not give healthcare providers or patients enough time to transition, which could have resulted in treatment interruptions for those relying on compounded medications. The second, failure to consider supply chain realities. According to the lawsuit, despite the FDA's claim that the shortage was over, pharmacies are still struggling to access enough supply of the branded versions. Wholesalers are reported to be receiving only limited stock, often just 2 or 3 boxes of Zepbound per day, leaving patients on long waiting lists. The third, arbitrary and capricious action. The plaintiffs argue that the FDA based its decision solely on information provided by the drug's manufacturer, Eli Lilly, and did not adequately consider input from pharmacies or patients who continue to experience shortages. The lawsuit highlights that the American Society of Health System Pharmacists still lists Tirzepatide as being in shortage, contradicting the FDA's position. Questions about government transparency and patient care are at the heart of this lawsuit. The Outsourcing Facilities Association argues that the FDA violated the Administrative Procedure Act, the APA. This law requires federal agencies to follow specific procedures when making changes that affect the public. By removing Tirzepatide from the drug shortage list without prior notice or an opportunity for public comment, the FDA, according to the plaintiffs, has acted unlawfully. They argue that the decision was made in haste, with little explanation, and without considering critical data that would have shown the shortage is far from resolved. For patients, the stakes could not be higher. With compounded versions of Tirzepatide, many will be able to get their prescriptions filled. And for those waiting for the FDA-approved versions, Mounjaro and Zepbound, the wait could be much longer than the FDA seems willing to admit. Compounding has filled a crucial gap for patients during the Tirzepatide shortage. The FDA's decision to halt this process will only make it harder for people to get the medication they need, especially when Eli Lilly's supply still isn't meeting demand in many regions. Now, as always, I want to remind you that I'm not a doctor or a lawyer. What I've shared today is my everyday guy, my suburban father, understanding of the legal filing and its implications. If this affects your access to Tirzepatide, or if you're concerned about your treatment options, please consult with your healthcare provider or seek legal advice. If you'd like to read the entire filing, I'll leave a link in the description. This case could change everything for patients relying on compounded Tirzepatide. While the FDA has declared the shortage over, the reality on the ground tells a very different story. Lorraine and I are committed to informing you about these critical developments. The FDA has strictly relied on Eli Lilly's word for it, and Eli Lilly's word for it is strictly based off of their defense of their profits. If this lawsuit succeeds, it could restore access to compounded Tirzepatide for many patients who still can't get their hands on the branded versions. Finally, we have to ask, what does this mean for compounded Tirzepatide users? For those of us relying on these life-saving medications, the opportunity for a judge to issue a temporary restraining order could provide a glimmer of hope. It could provide us an additional 14 days to get everything in order, to make sure we've got our medications. This TRO could temporarily halt the FDA's decision to remove Tirzepatide from the shortage list, meaning compounding pharmacies could continue to provide their versions of Tirzepatide for now if the TRO were issued. But what happens next is critical. If the judge grants a stay, it could reinstate the sale of compounded Tirzepatide beyond the 14-day window, providing much-needed relief to patients who depend on these affordable alternatives. For now, compounded Tirzepatide users can breathe a little easier, but the long-term availability of these medications hangs in the balance as the legal battle continues. Please make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates. This legal fight isn't just about regulations, it's about people, patients like you and me who are on this adventure together, and I dare say it's not the first legal fight. I feel certain there'll be other court battles. Join us Thursday night at 7 Eastern Standard Time for the Downsized Live, where we'll answer questions and discuss everything that's happening in the GLP-1 world. I'm sure this will come up. If you're experiencing difficulties getting access to Mounjaro or Zepbound due to shortages at your pharmacy, it's essential to report this directly to the FDA. Your reports help ensure that the actual situation on the ground is recognized and could make a difference in how quickly these issues are addressed. You can easily report drug shortages through the FDA's drug shortage portal. I'll include a link in the description. By sharing your experience, you're not only advocating for yourself, but also helping others who are facing similar challenges. Remember, no matter where you are in your weight loss, your GLP-1 adventure, Lorraine and I are right here with you, facing the same challenges and celebrating the same victories. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Durham, and we are The Downsized.